What I'd like to talk about today with everybody is the Aseret Adibros, using Hasidic commentary on the Aseret Adibros, go through the Ten Commandments, and to try and come to a deeper understanding of it. Now, we already discussed on Monday the seven Noahide laws. Seven Noahide laws were given obviously prior to the Ten Commandments. They were by the generation of Noah, they had them. In addition to that, there were other commandments that the patriarchs kept. And also, we saw in last week's portion that the Jewish people took upon themselves three commandments, or the Jewish people were given three commandments in this place called Mara. They were given the laws of judgment, Dinin, also the laws of the court system, the laws of Shabbos, and the laws of honoring your father and mother. And these are repeated. Shabbos and honoring your father and mother are repeated again in this week's portion. So I always think that we often study Ten Commandments and we start at the first of the Ten Commandments. And then since it's so interesting and so fascinating, we never get past the first one. So I want to start at the end of the Ten Commandments this time and work backwards, because I'm afraid otherwise we'll never get to the end of the Ten Commandments. So we have to start at the end and then we'll go backwards. So we'll start with the last of the commandments. And the commandment is, you're not allowed to covet the wife of your friend. You're not allowed to covet his servant, his maid, his ox, his donkey, and everything that belongs to your friend. So let's first see what Rashi says about this text. Again, this is chapter 20, verse 14. And Rashi actually doesn't comment on it. So before we go to Hasidic commentaries, we looked at Rashi. Rashi left this empty. So Rashi didn't feel that we needed to comment on it. And let me just say what the Mechilta says. Later on, it says lo titaveh. So that there's two separate prohibitions. There's a lust and there's a desire. So this prohibition of coveting is basically wanting something that somebody else has, even if you don't think you're going to take it. Like, let's say somebody else has a beautiful house and you say, oh, I wish I had that house. Well, you're now in violation. So the Rambam says that the prohibition is just like beseeching, meaning to say that it's actually just asking for it, whereas the Ravid says that the prohibition here is actually taking it. So that's a fundamental difference between Maimonides and Ravid about this. So just putting out there that that's something about this prohibition. So now let's see some of the Hasidic commentary on this idea. So first we go to the Admor, Rabbi Yechiel Nechol of Zlochov, and he says there's a known question here. How could the Torah command something of us that's not really in our ability? Meaning, Torah is commanding us not to desire something. How could Torah command us not to desire something somebody else has? Somebody's got, let's say, a nice physique. We say, oh, I wish I had that physique. I mean, you know what? I could dream all I want. I'm never going to be the same size as LeBron James. So how could Torah command us not to desire that? And even if a person strongly says, I'm going to work not to desire it, one way or another, he could come to this prohibition. So rather, says Rabbi Yechiel Nechol of Zlochov, he says it's not a commandment. Get this. He says it's a promise. It's a promise. A person who is careful with the first 9 commandments and he keeps the first 9 of the commandments, the Torah is promising you that you will not covet, that you won't come to the 10th commandment, that you won't violate the 10th commandment. So it's not a commandment as much as it's a promise from Hashem that you won't violate. That's the answer of Rabbi Chil Michal of Zlotchev. The Ksav Kabbalah goes in a different direction. He says, how's it possible, he asks the same question, how's it possible that a person will not desire something in his heart? Doesn't the wave desire something in its heart, even contrary to the will of man? How can we control our heart? So he says, he quotes the Sefer Abris. It says about the verse, you shall love Hashem with all your heart. Why does it have to say bechol avacha? On the verse, it says you shall love, on the Shema, it says you shall love Hashem your God with all of your heart. Why does it say with all of your heart? Why doesn't it just command us that you shall love Hashem with your heart? The word with all seems to be extra. So the intent of that verse is that your heart needs to be overflowing, filled with love of God, meaning to say that you shouldn't have in your heart a desire for love of God and also a desire for love of the world. Everything has to stem from the love of God. And if your heart will love God with all of its, to its full capacity, then it's impossible that you'll desire anything else from the world, because then there's no other space for anything else. Your love of God will be all encompassing. And so too, and it's like a full cup that can't desire anything else. So if you have this love of God, you won't desire something else. Meaning to say, if you're in a place of complete gratitude to God, complete appreciation of everything that God has given us in our life, then we will not have this desire for anything else. It just won't happen. And we won't be coveting something else. If we truly appreciate everything that God has given us, we won't covet anything else. So, okay, so that is the 10th commandment. That we'll go to now to the 9th commandment. The 9th commandment it states, Lo ta'aneh v'reacha eid shaker. Hello, Joyce. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Love it when you join us. So it says, Lo ta'aneh v'reacha eid shaker. You're not allowed to bear false witness against your fellow. So let's see Stanley, you're trying to say something?
Yeah, are these commandments in the order of importance?
Going back to, so it says in the verse, it says you're not allowed to bear false witness. And then it goes into, you're not allowed to desire the house of your friend. You're not allowed to desire the wife of your friend. So Rav Mordechai Yehuda Leib Zaks comments the following. He says, when we come to the second version of the 10 Commandments, which is in Parshas V'etchanan, it doesn't say eid sheker. It doesn't say you cannot bear a false witness. It says lo ta'aneh v'reacha eid shav. There's a slight difference. Instead of sheker, which usually means false, it says shav, which means vain or not true. And there it says lo tachmod eshet re'echa v'lo titaveh beit re'echa. So there it says do not titaveh, and here it uses the word tachmod. So those are two distinctions. And distinction number one is that in Yisro it uses the words eid sheker, which means false, and at Chanan it uses a different word for false called shav. And in Yisro they put the house before the wife. Do not desire your friend's house, and then do not desire your friend's wife. And in Vet Chanan it says the wife before the house. And so therefore he quotes the Baal HaTurim. We will always love to cite the Baal HaTurim, that 14th century commentary. And he says about the connection, it says, Lo ta'aneh v'reacha eid shav. And then it says, Lo tachmod eshes re'echa. So what does he say? What's the connection? That a person is not allowed to testify about the death of a man, of a woman's husband, in order if his desire is to marry her. Meaning to say he's not allowed to go and testify falsely, specifically because he wants to marry this woman. So that's what the Baal HaTurim says. So now we understand the distinctions. In Yitro, it says a false witness means to say that nobody else knows that it's false, but he knows it's false. And so therefore it says next to it, the testimony about the house of his friend, which is not his, because he wants to get his friend. So it will never be clear. Witnesses will never know about it. But in the second version of the Ten Commandments, it means Eight Shav. This is testimony that everybody knows is not accurate. And how do they know? Because he's about the wife of his friend, because he wants to marry him. And so therefore, it's a much clearer and also more sinister act. So that's the way the Baal HaTurim explains the distinction between the two. Okay, so now moving backwards, we go to the 8th of the commandments, and the commandment is Lo tignov, do not steal. Let's hear what it says here. Rashi says, this is the Rashi. Rashi says, what does it mean? Do not steal. It doesn't mean do not steal in the literal sense. It means, Rashi says, begone nefashos hakos medaber. The text, this goes to Stan's question also, because it refers to not stealing a soul. Why? Because it already says you shall not steal. In Leviticus 19:11, it says you shall not steal also there. And there is about stealing money. So why would it say it here? It only says it here, Rashi says, because it's talking within the context of other capital punishments. And so therefore, we say that clearly here it's a similar sin of such gravity as the other sins that are mentioned here. And so in order for it to carry capital offense, it has to be referring to kidnapping, stealing a soul. So, okay, let's see what some of the commentaries say about this. We have a few comments here. So the commentary, the Shachar HaTorah says, it says don't steal. Now, the Rashi, we said, even though we just quoted that Rashi, nevertheless, that's not going to force all the commentaries to interpret it like the Rashi said. So the Shachar HaTorah says, it just says don't steal. It doesn't say don't steal lettuce, don't steal an iPhone, don't steal a car, don't steal a house. It just says don't steal. Meaning to say, you can't steal anything. Not money, not what's called das habrios, and not das ha'elyon. Das habrios means stealing other people's minds, meaning fooling people or tricking them. And that's called stealing also. And stealing from God's mind, meaning acting in a deceptive way, trying to steal from God. So it's not just stealing in the sense of, garden variety stealing, stealing $5 from, some company, some nameless company, which you justify. It means don't act, anything that can possibly spiritually, metaphorically, symbolically fit into the category of stealing is prohibited. Much broader category than simply not stealing. Now comes the Kotzker. So the Kotzker always gives us one-liner zingers. Zingers from the Kotzker. You have to brace yourself to get ready to hear a Kotzker. This is what the Kotzker says. What does it mean when the Ten Commandments say don't steal? Doesn't mean don't steal from somebody else, because we have another verse that tells us that. It means don't steal from yourself, meaning don't lie to yourself. Don't fool yourself. That's what the Kotzker is saying. That's what the Ten Commandments are saying. Basically, don't try to steal from yourself, meaning you can't fool yourself. You can't lie to yourself. That's included within this prohibition. All right, that's a sharp one. How many of us are doing that? Are being honest with ourselves? He's like, the Kotzker said this before Freud was even conceived. He understood the necessity to get straight into the heart of our souls and be honest if we want to be able to move forward in life in a productive manner. So the Kotzker says it means don't steal from yourself. Also, he says, I don't know, I'm just going to translate this. You tell me what you think it means. The Kotzker says don't steal. It means don't be a thief. Even if you are not actually stealing. Don't be a thief. Even if you're not actually stealing, don't be a thief. So I think that's the same idea. Reb Eli Melech used to say, him and Reb Zusha said, you can learn something from everybody. So he said, what can you learn from a thief? So he listed all the things you can learn from a thief. You know about how the thief tries and keeps trying and trying again. For example, he learned 10 things from a thief. But I was also thinking, and that what we can learn from a thief is a thief. We can learn that there is a time where it's appropriate to steal. What can you learn? When is it appropriate to steal? When is it appropriate to steal? When you're stealing time for Torah study or to do something spiritually productive. Like you have 5 minutes here. You could just waste the 5 minutes by just like reading the newspaper and watching, you could read the newspaper and just waste 5 minutes of your life. Or if you have 5 minutes, let me learn a quick Rashi. Let me study a quick Rashi. Or for me, if I have 5 minutes, let me write 2 lines of the Torah. That's how you steal time. That's what we can learn from a thief. We can learn that some things you should steal. Steal the seconds. We have seconds left in our life, not hours, not minutes, seconds. We have to observe every second. And somebody was talking to me they tried to talk to me about politics today. And I said, I have such little time left in this world. Do you think I want to spend my time thinking about this Narishkeit? I want to spend it thinking about Torah study and or writing a Torah or talking to people I care deeply about, spending time with people that I care deeply about, not about Narishkeit. So that's what it means to steal. We're going to steal time for Torah study. Okay, let me pause for a moment as April or Bruce are going to another comment from the Kotzker. There's a story. So one time in the Kotzker's house, and an object went missing. So the people thought that the object was stolen. So the Kotzker heard about this, and he was so upset. He said, what? It was stolen? How can it be that somebody stole it? It says in the Torah, you shall not steal. So the Ger Rebbe, the author of the Sfas Emes, says, at that time, I was in Kotsk. And I was a little boy when I heard the Kotzker Rebbe saying these words. How could it be? Nobody would have stolen it. It says in the Torah, don't steal. And he says, to this day, the way he said that stands in front of my eyes like a pillar of fire. When I heard him say, the way I heard him say that. So unfortunately, the Jews need to be even more careful about this. I had a teacher who said, if God really wanted the Jews not to steal, he wouldn't have said in the 10 Commandments, do not steal. He would have said nothing. And then in the Mishnah Berurah, which is like the commentary, the classic modern commentary on the Code of Jewish Law, it would have had a footnote that said, there are some who say that one should be strict and not steal. If he said it like that, then nobody would ever steal. But since it just says it straight out, do not steal, people don't think it applies to them. So that's what the Kotzker Rebbe says. That was the story with the Kotzker about stealing. And one more teaching here, and this comes from Reb Shlomo Zalman, who is the brother of Reb Chaim Volozhin. And he says when he was younger, he was known as a genius. So they tell this story. One time, there was a villager who came to pray in his base medrash, and he lost his sitter. He lost his prayer book. So the hold on one second. The 7 things you can learn from a thief. Okay, let's see. Hold on. You have it here? Okay, these are the 7 things you can learn from a thief. I had it as Reb Eli Melech Reb Zusha, but he said, from Reb Dov Bear. What are
It
they?
is Reb Zusha. It is Reb Zusha, but he explains it a little bit differently.
Okay. One is to work at night. If you can't get what you want in one night, you try again the next night. to love one's coworkers just as the thieves are very close with each other. Then the fourth, to be willing to risk one's life for even a little thing. Beautiful. Number five, not to attach too much value to things, even though one has risked one's life for them. I guess the thief, they're not sentimental about what they steal. Number six, to withstand all kinds of beatings and tortures, but to remain what you are. The thief never changes. And number seven, to believe that your work is worthwhile and not be willing to change it. This is classic Rav Eli Melcha Reb Zusha. You can learn from the thief. So they take even like this person, the thief never changes, says, oh, we can learn from him. We learn to be committed to what we believe in. Such a chap. Okay.
And like you said, to put a different kind of value on something that you take. So like some of the thieves only take what they know that their fence will pay for it, but some of them take things because they value it more. And so you said before about learning Torah, so I might think that these words of Torah are more important than other words. So anyway.
Shekoyach. Very nice. Thank you, Rabbi Yosef. Okay, so let's go to the story I was in the middle of about do not steal. Okay, the story is about Reb Shlomo Zalman, who's the brother of Reb Chaim Volozhin. And when he was younger, he was known as a genius. So they tell the story that one time a villager lost his sitter and in that base medrash where Reb Shlomo Zalman was praying. So this villager accused that Shlomo Zalman of stealing his sitter. So one of the senior people there in the base medrash, he was so upset at this villager. He said to him, you think this child who observes the Torah and is so careful about mitzvot, you're suspecting him that he's going to violate the concept of do not steal? How could you suspect him? Well, in the middle of this rebuke, this little boy, Reb Shlomo Zalman, who was 5 years old at the time, he turned to this Torah scholar and he said, wait 1 second. Even if I had stolen the sitter, even if I had stolen this prayer book, I would actually not be violating the commandment of do not steal. So this senior Talmud Chacham said, what are you talking about? So this little 5-year-old kid responds with a wide smile, and he says that refers to, well, Tignov doesn't refer to stealing a sitter, refers to kidnapping, and and this is stealing an object. And so if you steal money, you're not in violation of Tignov. So therefore, you're only in violation of Tignov that it says in Parshas Kodshim. So therefore, this is the story that they say about him, that he corrected this, and when he was 5 years old, he already knew the distinction between that it's not in the Ten Commandments. So if anybody says, oh, you're violating the Ten Commandments, you could be as smart as this 5-year-old and say, no, actually, I'm violating the verse in Leviticus, not the verse in the Ten Commandments. Okay, now let's go on to the previous one. Before it says do not steal, it says do not commit adultery. Okay, we won't talk about that one. There's obviously a lot to talk about that, but I'll just say one thing also from the Kotzker Rebbe about adultery. He says adultery means it doesn't just mean adultery according to the Kotzker. Remember, I say Kotzker goes straight into our hearts. The Kotzker says adultery is also overindulgence of our bodies. He says overindulgence of our bodies is also a form of adultery. What does that mean? It means, I guess our bodies are supposed to be dedicated to God. But if we're overindulging, then we're forgetting our purpose. We're forgetting our focus in life. It's the Kotzker. He doesn't give us a second. As Bruce was saying, he doesn't give us a second. Okay, so now we're up to the one before, and this is the 6th commandment, and that is do not murder. Lo tirtzach. It's not do not kill, but it's do not murder. Do not murder. So let's see. We have a couple of comments here. So one is from the son-in-law of the Vilna Gaon, and the other is from the Chasam Sofer. So actually, this is interesting that there's two ways to read this verse. I mean, you might think it's exactly the same, but there's actually a slight distinction if we're reading it by ourselves or if we're reading it in aloud in the community. That the Magen Avram, the classic commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, states that if we're in public, we read it with a komat, like awe, under the tzadi, lo tirtzoch. But if we're an individual, we read it as a patach, like under the tzaddik, as lo tirtzach. So this is a slight distinction. Probably whoever's the Torah reader, when you hear it read this way this Shabbat, probably is not going to be aware of this distinction. So you might want to be nunnik and point it out to them. Okay, so the Chasam Sofer says this hints to what the sages said, meaning to say, it says in the verse ki rabim chalalim hipila, that many were thrown down. This refers to a student who gives rulings before he was actually mature enough to give the ruling. He does a lot of damage because he inappropriately is giving rulings and teachings, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. Va'atzumim kol harugah. What does that verse refer to? That refers to a student that reaches the age of understanding and does not give it. Okay, so there's two problems. One is a student who, while he's still immature, gives halachic rulings. He ends up killing a lot of people with his, not quote unquote killing, but he misleading them, doing a lot of damage. And the other one refers to people who are capable of teaching and they don't. Well, they also cause a lot of damage because they're not educating people properly. So therefore, says the Chasam Sofer, this commandment not to kill applies to both of them. The one who shouldn't be teaching and teaches, and the one who should be teaching and doesn't teach. So he says the way to remember it is that the first one, the one who shouldn't be teaching and teaches, that's the individual, that's when it's spelled with a patach, with the patach is from petach. He opens up his mouth to teach before he's supposed to be teaching. And the other one is the kametz, meaning to say, he closes his mouth, kometz, like to close. He closes his mouth and he doesn't want to rule even after he came to the appropriate time to give halachic rulings. So that's what the Chasam Sofer says, that do not kill. These rebbes are trying to say, like, most of the people in their audience would never kill, would never steal, would never commit adultery. And they're trying to relate it to people in a way that the people are sitting there and say, okay, I think I got this one down. I'm not violating this other one of the Ten Commandments. They say, no, you might be. If you're saying something that could cause a lot of damage, or if you're not speaking when you could be helping people, that's a violation of the commandment, do not kill. So the reason is that in our version of the Ten Commandments in Exodus, when it says do not kill, it's spelled with a kamet, with a patach. And in Deuteronomy, it's spelled with a komat. So this distinction, the son-in-law of the Vilna Gaon, whose name is Rabbi Noach Mindis, he says it as follows. The sages say, it says in Bar Mitzvah 58b, whoever embarrasses his friend, it's as though you killed him. It's as though you spilled his blood. Because the redness of his face drains and he becomes white. So therefore, somebody who kills somebody, in fact, Shari Tshuva Rabbeinu Yonah says that this is a form of murder, of embarrassing somebody so that you change the color, the complexion of their face. So Rabbi Noach Mindis says that there are two types of killing somebody. There is actually killing, and that's with the patach, meaning to say, he opens up the body and he takes the blood outside. And then there's another form of killing with the kamatz, that's embarrassing him. And so therefore the blood remains. The blood remains in him, but you've killed him nonetheless. And these are two ways to remember that. Okay, so now we go back to the concept of honoring your father and mother. I want to say about this one before we'll read the verse, but when you think about this, I was thinking about this, that this is the definition of what it means to be human, is to honor a father and mother. Why? Because think about all the other animals in the kingdom. How many of them honor their father and mother? Maybe we'll talk about an elephant. They have like complex societal structures where the elephants live with multi-generations, or maybe you have some animals that are, like live in packs, like a wolf or something. But any other, can you name any other creatures where they actually honor the mother, where the children honor the mother? We have a lot of, almost every animal, the parents, every mammal, the parents create the child and make sure that they are well enough to exist on their own. But what animal out there goes after they build their home and bring their parents into their home and cares for their parents? Can you name another animal? I'm asking you. Can somebody name an animal that does this? Can you name an animal that does this? I think it's only the human being. Only the human being does this. Only the human beings do this. Can anybody think of anything else? Any other creature? No one? I'll pause here. Let me see if anybody's going to answer this question. Okay, so this is my thesis, that it's only the human beings that go out of that, where the child says it's not just about creating the next generation, it's also about honoring our parents. And that's, I think, not necessarily intuitive. The reason why it's not intuitive is we see that it's not part of evolution. The other animals don't do it. It's not something that we're predisposed to. It's the Torah contribution. People think, oh, everybody would know on their own to honor our parents. I say, no, we wouldn't know on our own to honor our parents. And this goes back to Bruce. Why is this between man and God? Because it's not for man's benefit. It's not intuitive that we should be honoring our parents. It's because it's a commandment from, we have to have gratitude, but that comes from the whole concept of gratitude, which is the concept of spirituality. But the whole idea of honoring our parents is something which is, I wouldn't say unique to humans, but almost overwhelmingly unique to humans. We don't see it in the other kingdoms. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the bees, they honor the queen bee. Is that it? But is she their mother? I don't know. Anyway, and they certainly don't do the father. They don't honor the father bee. It's just the mother. So anyway, this was the idea I was thinking about honoring.
They don't honor the bee, they serve her.